Good evening. This is the January 21, 2025 special meeting of the Complaint Committee of the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force of the City and County of San Francisco. The time is 4:03 p.m. The Sunshine Ordinance Task Force and its committees convene in hybrid meetings that allow for either in-person attendance or remote participation. Public comment will be taken on each item of the agenda. Any member of the Sunshine Task Force Complaint Committee may call for decorum due to the disorderly conduct of meeting participants. Persons who engage in threatening and/or menacing behavior may be asked to leave. Chair Schmidt, that completes my announcements.
Okay, I think we can go ahead with number one, and I will be trying to move us through because I think this whole calendar has to hopefully be concluded at 5:30. So let's go ahead with number one.
Item number one, call to order, roll call, and agenda changes. We have advance notice that Member Sugarman will not be present this evening.
Yes. Other than that, and we did know about Member Sugarman, I don't think there are any changes that I know of. It sounds like we'll go straight through here. Member Stein.
I'm just wondering if we want to move number 4 until after we hear the 2 cases or 4 cases that we're looking at, only because that's a discussion and if parties are available so that we don't have to make them wait.
Yes, that's fine. Let's, although I don't know if without Member Sugarman, I'm not sure if we'll do much with 4, but I'm open to talking. And so let's move forward to the back.
Item 3.
Number 4 is it's our standing discussion matter.
Okay.
And we're just going to put that after the cases.
All right.
So after number 8, after item 8.
All right.
So, yeah, other than that, I think we're good for call and roll.
Taking the roll call. Member Stein.
Present.
Member Stein, present. Chair Schmidt.
Present.
Chair Schmidt, present. Member Sugarman, absent. 2 present. We have a quorum.
I guess maybe number 2.
Item number 2, approval of the December 17, 2024 Complaint Committee minutes. Complaint Committee meeting minutes. I do have a comment. There was a correction to the minutes, and Commission Secretary Conifrey and I worked on the language. Ms. Conifrey is present. Let me promote her to panelist. Ms. Conifrey is a panelist. The correction was in the statement made by respondent. In the paragraph beginning, Maureen Conifrey, parentheses, respondent, close parentheses, stated her objection to this hearing as the matter has been adjudicated with a violation found. Ms. Conifrey further stated that the city attorney's office advised that the Fire Commission could go into closed session to discuss the personal schedules of here's the correction, of the fire commissioners to schedule non-disciplinary separation hearings. The language, employee subject to non-disciplinary separation, has been removed. This change has been made on the minutes. The minutes are posted. The minutes posted in this packet are not current. Ms. Conifrey, hold on a moment before you're making comment. Members, do you have any questions for me?
Not at the moment.
Do you have any questions for Ms. Conifrey?
No. But let's just make sure we're all on the same page on the corrected wording, so we have it on the record.
Shall I read the affected sentence?
Well, I just, it sounds to me like you already have Ms. Conifrey's assent on this. And I know you just read it in, so I don't need a repetition of it. I don't have any objection to that change myself. If that is the only change we want to make, let's just, Member Stein, do you have anything on that?
I don't, and I'll just say I wasn't at that meeting, so it's hard for me to
Got it.
understand the full import of that.
Okay. Let's just make sure that that is everything that Ms. Conifrey is seeking in terms of changes. And then I'll make the motion to approve with the changes.
All right. Ms. Conifrey, I see you don't have your hand raised, but would you like to make any additional comment? Ms. Conifrey, shall I unmute you or will you unmute yourself? Ms. Conifrey, I'm unmuting you.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I couldn't unmute myself. That is correct. So it was, we went into the closed session to discuss the commissioner's schedule, not the members. We have no access to the members' schedules.
All right. So with that change, thank you. Thank you. That correction is significant and it is a good correction. I'm going to move that with that correction, the minutes be approved.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Taking public comment. Anyone in the room wishing to make public comment on item number 2, please approach the podium. Members of the online community, please raise your hand in the app or press *3. We have one hand raised.
Yeah, let's go ahead.
Hello, caller. Do you wish to make comment on item number 2?
Actually, I'm for file number 24065 later in the meeting.
Thank you.
Sure.
We have no other individuals waiting to make public comment.
Okay, time to vote.
Taking the vote, Chair Schmidt.
Aye.
Chair Schmidt, aye. Member Stein.
Aye.
Member Stein, aye. Member Sugarman, absent. 2 ayes, motion passes.
Number 3, please.
Item number 3, public comment. Members of the public may address the committee on matters that are within the committee's jurisdiction, but not on today's agenda. Members in the room or individuals in the room, if you'd like to make public comment, please approach the podium. Members of the online community, please raise your hand in the app or press *3. I'll give you a moment. We have no one approaching the podium, no one in the room.
All right, that concludes number 3. We're moving number 4. And so let's go into the complaints.
Item number 5, file number 24065. Complaint filed by Anonymous, TMR, against the San Francisco City Attorney's Office for allegedly violating Administrative Code Sunshine Ordinance Section 67.21 by failing to respond to a public records request in a timely and/or complete manner. We have Ms. Quart from the City Attorney's Office. If we have an individual in the online community who would like to make public or who is a party to this matter, please raise your hand in the app or press *3 and I will move you to a panelist position. Checking the caller. Hello, caller. Are you here for file number 24065?
Yes, I am.
All right, one moment, please. I'm transferring you to a panelist position. All right, he's been transferred.
One question, Ms. Peterson. The TMR designation in the agenda, what does that mean?
When someone wishes to be anonymous, we identify them by using the first 3 characters or digits in their email address.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Okay, this is the first of 4 complaints we have on for today. Let me explain that this is the complaints committee that looks to see if cases may be ready to be heard by the full task force. We do want to look at the substance of each case, but we do not make any final decisions in committee. We will often take a case and push it forward so that it would get on the calendar at the full task force. We do look at a couple of we think there's sort of preliminary issues, whether the task force has jurisdiction, whether the matter does or does not involve public records or public meetings. We sometimes make recommendations to the task force, but not all the time. In today's matter, we'll start with up to 3 minutes hearing from the petitioner side, followed by up to 3 minutes hearing from the respondent side. Tell us what you think we should know about the case, having in mind that we have had access to the documentation already and we've reviewed it. After the 3 minutes or up to 3 and up to 3 minutes, we will possibly have questions for the parties. And then we will deliberate amongst ourselves to decide what should we do with this case. Okay, with that in mind, I am ready. When our timer is ready, let's hear first from this petitioner.
Petitioner, you are unmuted. Are you ready to speak?
Yes.
All right, your 3 minutes begins now.
Sure. I contacted the city attorney's office regarding a public records request. I called their main phone number and spoke with the receptionist. They gave me an email address to send my records request to. I made that request and never heard back within 10 days. I called back that phone number and asked if I can make that records request over the phone. The receptionist at that phone number said they were instructed not to take public records requests over the phone and instead guided me to another email address, public.records@sfcityattty.org. I made the request there, and some of the requests were fulfilled after I made several phone calls to the city attorney's office and was put in touch with Elizabeth Kubreth. And she said they're having trouble with their email account and they could not receive email messages from my protonmail.com domain, which doesn't seem to be true since they've produced some of my emails in the records related to this complaint. So it seems that the city attorney's office believes that if it's just more difficult to access my email messages, that they don't have to fulfill those requests. And they say that it's some sort of filter that they don't set up, that Microsoft sets up, but they're still in receipt of my email messages, which I'm a little bit confused that I guess they have to take an extra step to view my messages. So I'm unsure why they're not fulfilling my requests. I've tried my best to work with them to find a solution where they told me to speak with receptionists directly regarding communication with my requests. And the receptionists have told me on a number of occasions that they will not take these communications from me and I have to email them in. When I finally did receive a response to my most recent request, they altered that request, did not fulfill the request with any documents, so they don't have any documents. In my communications with the city attorney's office, I found a couple of people sympathetic to what I'm going through, and they say that there are documents that are responsive to my request, and they haven't been produced. I have a list of some of those documents. I produced one of those documents, or at least a description of that document,
30 seconds.
in my complaint and notes. It's a settlement between Lynn Rawls and the city and county of San Francisco. And that document, even when they altered my request, that document should have been produced but wasn't. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. All right, when the timer is ready, let's hear from the respondent, Ms. Court.
Are you ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
Your 3 minutes begins now.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Schmidt, Member Stein. This complaint, as the requester alluded to, is really an issue dealing a technological problem that we're having with our email system spam filter. When this particular requester sends emails to our office for whatever reason, Microsoft's spam filtering tool has quarantined all of their messages. So as individual email users, these emails never end up in our inboxes or even in our individual spam boxes. We've asked our IT staff to investigate this as to why this is. They're unable to fix that technological problem. So we've explained this issue to the requester and suggested alternative methods of communicating with our office in the future, like calling our main line. This is the first that I'm hearing that our receptionists told them that they wouldn't be able to take a request over the phone. That's not our office's policy, so I'll look into that. But we've basically had a series of requests from this requester over the last 6 months that are detailed in the letter we sent. Every time that the requester has found another way to get in touch with us by phone and alert us that they sent us an email, we have had our IT staff go into the quarantined messages and then search for that individual email and then release those messages on that message on an individual basis. And every time that we've had an email released, we have responded at that point in a timely and complete manner from that point. So for that reason, we'd ask that the task force dismiss this complaint. We totally understand that this is a frustrating situation for the requester. It's frustrating for us as well. We have been in a communication with the requester, and we do hope to have a productive working relationship with them to, despite this technological challenge, just to ensure they get the records they're seeking. So with that, happy to take any questions.
Thank you. All right, it is time that we may have questions, and I know I have one or two. Member Stein.
Yeah, I have a couple questions for the petitioner first. You received a response from the city attorney's office on January 13th saying that they had no civil litigation settlements that were responsive to your request. And I believe you replied that their email was non-responsive to what you had requested, but I wondered if you could elaborate on how it was non-responsive to your request.
Sure. I'll go back to my original request. It'll take me a moment to find that. So my original request had to do with claims filed against the city. It says, for the period of the past 2 years, please provide all settlement agreements entered into by the city of San Francisco that do not include a waiver of section 1542 of the California Civil Code. So I guess I don't understand, like that covers everything, all settlement agreements. And now in their response on the 13th, they've narrowed it to something else. And they said that included civil litigation. And then somebody else at the attorney's office said that's not true. And they told me about several documents, including Lynn Rawls versus City and County of San Francisco Superior Court case number CGC-20-588157, that would have been responsive even with the altered request that they responded with. So they went from my request to their response says something different. They changed my request and they said there are no responsive documents, but they altered my request. And even with their altered request, there are responsive documents.
So can I just clarify? So you're not just looking for civil litigation settlements, you're looking for settlements that fall outside of that designation as well?
Yeah, so my request was all settlement agreements.
Okay. And then you mentioned a partial list of responsive documents that should have been produced. And of course, you mentioned the Lynn Rawls and the city settlement, but can you tell us more about other settlement agreements that you believe should have been produced?
What I'd like to do is keep those private so I know if they're producing everything, because I don't believe that, I kind of believe they're just trying to sweep this. They're not giving this the attention that it needs. So what I'd like to do is give this one example and then see what they come up with. And if they don't come up with the other documents, and that's what the person at the city attorney's office recommended, was, hey, give them one and then see if they produce everything. And then you have these other in the bag to show that they haven't produced other ones.
Okay, thank you. And then a couple questions for the respondent. Are you aware of this particular settlement, Lynn Rawls versus the city?
So when the requester brought that up in their email back to us, asking specifically about that settlement, our attorneys went through that settlement. It does include a clause, a 1572 clause, and they had, to our understanding, asked for all settlements that did not include that 1572 clause. All of the settlements that we reviewed included a 1572 clause, so we did not have any responsive records. We're happy to give them this Lynn Rawls settlement if that's what they're looking for, but that wasn't how we interpreted the request because it did include that clause.
Can you just explain briefly what a 1572 clause is?
That is something super technical that I don't know.
Okay, all right.
Sorry.
And I'm wondering,
If I could interject really quickly, yeah, I'm so sorry. I just wanted to say that it's 1542, so I want to make sure that they're not looking for 1572 when my request is 1542.
Oh, I see. That's true. Okay.
I can just say that almost every release settlement that occurs in California has it's almost boilerplate to settlement agreements. It doesn't always appear, but it's possible that it's very rare that it wouldn't appear. And I think that without any reference to 1542, it would be a violation of the law. It wouldn't necessarily invalidate the settlement agreement, but there has to be reference to 1542 in some way.
Is that a confidentiality clause?
No, it's not about confidentiality. It's about the scope of a release and what it basically notifies the releasing party of a right, and there's often statement in there that the releasing party waives rights under 1542, that it's pretty much a boilerplate kind of situation. Yeah.
May I make one more statement if you don't mind?
Yeah, please.
So this 1542 basically says that you're giving up, like when you file a claim or file a lawsuit, oftentimes you spell out exactly what you're claiming, what you're complaining about, what you're seeking recovery of, monetary, otherwise. And so this section 1542 basically says you're not only giving up any rights to what you're complaining about or claiming, but you're also giving up any unknown claims. And so that's the big one, is unknown claims. And I'm a little bit confused by the city attorney's office response, because this particular document, the Lynn Rawls case, has been published online, and that section 1542 that they say is in the settlement agreement is missing from what has been published online.
Okay. I don't know how relevant the 1542 will be to like a task force decision, but I'm just wondering if it doesn't, like, why ask for only agreements that don't have that clause, petitioner? Why not just ask for all agreements?
Well, because it's basically what the other gentleman said. He says it is pretty much boilerplate, and that's what the city attorney's office says, but that's not the case. It's left out in some settlement agreements. So I think it's relevant because I only want those agreements. I don't have to sort through every single one of them. It would be easy to produce just the ones that lack that waiver of section 1542. And so I guess I don't understand, again, why the settlement agreement published online is lacking that section, that waiver, and then we're being told that it does have that waiver now.
Okay, and then one more question for the respondent. Have you had other requesters contact your office regarding emails that you didn't receive because of this Microsoft filter?
Yeah, we had one, I believe it was actually in a complaint like maybe 2 years ago before you all. We had one other issue like this. It wasn't the same email domain. It wasn't the same, as far as I know, not the same requester. There wasn't any commonality really between the two emails that were being quarantined. So yeah,
Okay.
but that's the one that I know of.
Okay, that's all my questions.
Okay. Question to petitioner, I'll call it an interpretation that the city attorney's office made, that the request should be construed to exclude these various types of administrative employment issues. Is that what your intention was, to exclude those types of settlement agreements?
No, my request, I phrased it the way that I thought was appropriate, where I said all settlement agreements, and I left that out.
Okay. Okay.
Any
Thank you.
exclusions out of the equation.
In question to respondent, it appears that there was not a search done in these other categories of what are termed administrative administrative matters. There was no search done by anyone to find if there were any releases without the waiver. Is that accurate?
No, that's not accurate. No, we went one by one through settlements to see if there was any without that.
Including in the category that the statements made that it was understood that there was not going to be production of these administrative matters. You're saying well, okay, you're not.
I don't follow. So any, regardless of whether something goes to all the way to litigation or it's just settled at a claim stage, we would have a settlement agreement with that party. So it's not just, anything settled at the claim stage would still have a settlement agreement. So I think that encompasses all of the records certainly that our office would have.
Got it. And so your office did a search of releases, including any matter that could have involved a settlement agreement.
Yeah, correct.
Is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's correct.
And was it determined that there had not been any such agreements without a waiver?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's see. I think that's all I have. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to follow up briefly on what you're saying. So on page 18 of the packet that we have, there's a letter from your office, from Elizabeth Coolbrith, saying, I'm responding on behalf of the city attorney's office to your below request. Based on your request, we understand that you are seeking relevant agreements settling civil litigations and not agreements settling administrative actions, i.e. actions brought before the Public Employment Relations Board, the Division of Occupational Health and Safety, a city department's contemplated or imposed discipline of a city employee or union grievances. And then you say, we conducted a diligent search for all such records in our possession. So it seems like from that letter that you were saying we've decided that this is about civil litigations and not these other agreements. And then when you say we've conducted a search, it would seem that you've conducted a search of the civil litigations, but not.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's true. That's correct.
I think that's
yeah.
the potential.
I was thinking in terms of like administrative things, I was thinking things that did not make it to litigation, but I understand when you're talking about the Public Employment Relations Board, yeah, more like administrative judicial bodies. That makes sense. Yes, we were interpreting the request to exclude those things. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
And so the items in that letter that are described as being outside the scope of what's believed to be what the petitioners sought, which is about civil litigation. In those matters, Public Employee Relations Board, Department of Occupational Safety and Health, discipline, it sounds like there was not a search done in those matters.
Of those matters, no.
Okay.
That's
okay,
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I don't think I have any other questions for them. I think I'm ready to talk about.
Can I make one final comment if you don't mind?
Very brief.
Sure. I try to work with the city attorney's office to find a solution because it's tremendously difficult to get a hold of somebody on the phone. And I suggested a couple of things using the Next Request platform like many other city agencies, or even doing what the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force does by having a Google form on their web page. And those are two easy solutions to overcome the issue they have with their email filter, and particularly a low-cost one would be the Google form.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
Can I just
yes, Member Stein.
petitioner, just because I kind of asked you this before, but I just want to be 100% clear. So you are interested in all of these settlement agreements, whether it's civil litigation or whether it has to do with administrative action?
All settlement agreements, that's what I requested.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
Okay, I do see. I mean, I understand that it's going to be very rare that there's not going to be a 1542 waiver in a civil litigation. So I don't know what the situation is in this Rawls matter, because it sounds like there's a question of fact whether there's a 1542 waiver in there. I'm just going to leave that alone for now. In terms of the other types of matters, it seems like the terms of the request would include those other kinds of matters. It just said all settlement agreements. Now, there may be a reason why an exemption might apply to that kind of material. There's nothing asserted here. So I don't know what exemption they might have, but it seems like construing this request to not include those matters is not appropriate. That's my thought on that matter. And so I think that's something where we're looking at a possible violation. The other thing is the frustration of sending in a request and you're asked to send a request in by email, and then you have to somehow follow up with phone calls, et cetera, to get someone to take it out of their, deep spam, I'll call it. That seems like we have to not be accepting that. That seems to be something that's in our realm as the Sunshine Task Force. So I don't know if we could just give a pass to that. I understand that it sounds like it's a technology issue. It may be a very thorny technology issue. But I know that other agencies don't have that issue, and they have different ways of giving the public access by letting the public submit by email, et cetera. So if that's not being done here, I think we've got a problem. And so those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit complex. We're gonna have to really kind of look through the ordinance again to think about how that intersects with the sections or clauses outside of 67.21, simply having a late response or an incomplete response, which I think is in play here as well. I just noted that one of the requests they received, I think this petitioner submitted more than once, same request, and one of them was definitely received by December 20th, and then an extension wasn't asked for until January 2nd, which is more than 10 days from the receipt of the request. So I think that's an issue as well. So my sense would be that we send it to the full task force with the recommendation to consider, maybe a 6721 violation, as well as this issue of not being able to process email requests from certain servers. So maybe I'll just say that these are public records under our jurisdiction, and we should send this to the full task force for consideration.
With the recommendation?
With the recommendation of a 67.21 violation, but not limited to that.
Could I get clarification on the statement?
I'm not saying it very well. These are public records. I make a motion that these are public records under our jurisdiction and to send to the full task force for review. With a recommendation to consider a 67.21 violation for timeliness, as well as other possible violations.
I'm going to read this back. This is, do I have a move and second?
Pardon?
Is this moved and second before I read back?
I second.
Moved by Member Stein, seconded by Chair Schmidt, to find that the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force has jurisdiction over the matter, that the requested records are public, and refers the matter to the full task force for hearing or consideration.
For consideration of a 6721 violation, as well as other possible violations.
For consideration of a violation of Administrative Code Sunshine Ordinance, Section 67.21 for timeliness, as well as other possible violations, period.
That's it.
Yes, and it is seconded.
Thank you. Seconded by Chair Schmidt. Public comment?
Public comment, please.
Taking public comment on the matter. Anyone in the room wishing to make public comment on item 5, please approach the podium. Members of the online community, raise your hand in the app or press *3. I do see one hand raised. Let me check with this petitioner. Hello, petitioner. I believe you're here for item 7. Do you also wish to make a public comment on item 5?
Yes, I do. Aaron Wilson here in Pro Per. Back to the beginning of what this guy said, why didn't they just modify it to take a phone request? That would have resolved, they have a problem, so let's adapt to the other ways that are legally afforded and just take a phone request. And then, then they have the time to straighten it out, and that's a Band-Aid for it. Why not?
Thank you. We have no one approaching the podium, no other callers in the queue.
Okay, let's vote.
Taking the vote, Member Stein.
Aye.
Member Stein, aye. Chair Schmidt.
Aye.
Chair Schmidt, aye. Member Sugarman, absent. 2 ayes, motion passes.
Thank you to the parties. Thank you for your time. Yeah. Okay, when you're ready, let's hear the first Barker matter, 24066.
Item number 6, file number 24066. Complaint filed by Justin Barker against the San Francisco Zoo Commission for allegedly violating Administrative Code Sunshine Ordinance, Section 67.15, by failing to provide an opportunity for members of the public to directly address a policy body, and 6716, by failing to record the minutes for each regular meeting of the board or commission. We do have Mr. Barker in the online community. One moment, I'll promote him to panelist. Regarding someone present from the zoo, the last communication, one moment, please. We did receive a communication from the zoo regarding the other matter on tonight's agenda, number 25003. I asked on Friday regarding a response on item 24066, and I have asked whether someone would be present at this evening's meeting. I have not received a response.
I want to, just before we hear, we'll go ahead and hear from Mr. Barker. This one's against the commission. And so I want to make sure that the task force gave appropriate notice to the commission. I saw that there was some communications were made to Rec and Park, and it looks like it was clarified. But the commission itself, I'm assuming that they've got notice, et cetera, et cetera. I just wanted to raise the issue and check before we hear from Mr. Barker. Yes, Ms. Dunn.
Not the joint zoo committee rather than commission.
I see it in two different
I know it's meant
ways
to be
here.
file, but then it's a joint zoo committee made up of 3 representatives from Parks and Rec, a Recreation and Parks Commission, and 3 members of the board of the San Francisco Zoological Society.
Okay.
So I think it's actually the committee.
It's a committee. Okay. I was reading from the other, the
It's
commission.
misnamed. In some
Okay.
cases.
I will
You're right.
correct that.
Yeah, it's committee.
The director was notified in both cases after the correction. So originally I had sent the complaint, the notice to respondent to the Rec and Park, and that was corrected
Okay.
by Ashley Summers, and that communication's in the packet.
Okay. So the director, that's Peterson, Correct.
With an O-N.
and on behalf of the zoo committee.
That's correct.
In this case. Okay. So let's assume that they have notice. It looks like they're not here today, but I think we can go forward. The member Stern, I'm open to, any recommendation you have on that. But at least for now, I'm okay with going ahead and hearing from Ms. Barker. Mr. Barker, sorry.
Let's say, I can't remember if it was in both files or just one, but I think that this, well, actually, maybe it was in the other one where the person mentioned, which was Peterson, correct? Basically said they wouldn't be here. They don't believe they need to be here.
Yes, one moment, please. I'm exchanging emails with the zoo. Would you hold on one moment, please?
But I'm trying to see if that was.
Again, I got a response back only on item 8.
Yeah, so it's
But
another.
I just asked for clarification again. There are 2 items tonight. Will anyone be present? The initial response was no one is at City Hall to make a statement.
So I think it was item 8 where they were clear that they didn't believe they were under the jurisdiction.
That's that being against the zoo, and they claim there's no jurisdiction.
Yeah. The reason I'm contacting the assistant to Director Peterson is because that is the only person who has responded. So I'm asking for clarification. Will anybody be here? There are 2 items on the agenda this evening. Please respond.
Okay. And so we don't expect anyone to be here in either matter. If they come, that's fine. But if they don't come, we'll figure out what we're going to do. So, zoo committee.
Excuse me. I
Yes.
see 2 additional callers who have joined us. If you are here for item number 6, file 24066, please raise your hand in the app or press star 3. I'll give you a moment. We have no one here from the zoo.
Okay, thank you. Let's go ahead and hear from Mr. Barker on this one. And then we'll see if we get anyone for respondent. But it seems like, Mr. Barker, we'll have up to 3 minutes from you. We do see, what's going on in this case. This is the one against the committee. Although we also we anticipate a possible claim that this task force has no jurisdiction. I don't know if that's true. We'll see, but we're exploring it right now. So when our timer's ready, Mr. Barker, we're ready to hear from you.
Mr. Barker, I see that you've unmuted yourself. Are you ready to begin? You have 3 minutes. Hello, Mr. Barker, are you there? Mr. Barker, I see that you've unmuted yourself. Mr. Barker, are you there?
Do you unmute them? It seemed like the other person said that they needed you to unmute them. Is that even a thing?
It's a two-way thing. Mr. Barker has unmuted himself.
Okay. Why don't we, if we're not hearing from Mr. Barker, we can check back, but since he's on the calendar later anyways, after this other matter, why don't we put this one on hold if that's acceptable to folks, and do the Wilson matter 25001.
All right. Mr. Barker, you will remain as a panelist. Item number 7.
Pardon me. That was, oh, okay, the commenter was Mr. Barker. Okay,
No, the commenter was Mr. Wilson.
Oh, wait.
that was Wilson. Yeah. So Wilson is here. So let's put that on hold, and let's take care of this other case. Wilson.
All right. Item number 7, file number 25001. Complaint filed by Aaron Wilson against Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing for allegedly violating Administrative Code Sunshine Ordinance, Section 67.21, by failing to respond to a public records request in a timely and/or complete manner. We have Mr. Wilson present, and we have Mr. DeVaris Robinson from Homelessness and Supportive Housing. One moment, please, promoting both of them to panelist. Both have been added.
Okay, let's go ahead. We'll hear from petitioner first.
Mr. Wilson, would you like to unmute yourself? Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Are you ready to speak? You will have 3 minutes.
Yeah, ready to go.
Your time begins now.
When I made my request, I tried to make it narrow. And this may be where the problem lies. I asked for emails and texts about mentioning me. This was misconstrued to you want your records. And I tried to analogize this to Ms. Peterson there. She didn't get it, or the response was like she was off on a different train of thought there. In other words, if I say I want emails between Buckaloo from HSH and somebody at Bayview Hunters Point Foundation, where I come up in the email conversation, that's the emails that I want. Those are the public records I want, and they should give them to me. But they're saying, to try to confuse it, in my view, saying you want your own records. So file this form and go to the privacy officer and get me off the case. No, I want specific records. So they keep pushing this, you want your own records. So I'm thinking, okay, how are we going to resolve this so I get the records I want? I think this is a good forum to do that. The second thing I want to say here is I then filed my third request, the second being a duplicate, so that's just been voided. The third request is a very broad request. I want all emails from HSH and Bayview Hunters Point Foundation from March 2024 to date. That was not responded to by today's deadline, January 21st, as required. Okay, so what's going on at HSH is my question. My answer is, I think they have a lot to hide. I think this is definitely a public interest item, and I'm one of the complainants on the HUD investigation into Bayview Hunters Point Foundation, HSH, the City of San Francisco, and Urban Alchemy for ADA violations, a federal matter. So that's what I have to say to open this thing up. What do I got to do to get emails talking about me, but not, this is Aaron Wilson's profile, this is his problem, this is his solution, whatever. I don't even know what exactly my records are, but I'm just, when they're talking, they talk about me. Those are the records I want. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Okay, from the respondent side, up to 3 minutes when the timer is ready to go.
Mr. Robinson, would you like to unmute yourself?
Yes, can you all hear me clearly?
Yes. Let me know when you'd like your 3 minutes to begin.
Thank you. Now it's perfect.
Your time begins now.
Good afternoon, Chair Schmidt and Member Stein. My name is DeVaris Robinson. I've been serving as the Sunshine and Compliance Officer for HSH for the past year as of tomorrow. I'll be serving as the sole respondent to this complaint. With respect for everyone's time today in this short hearing, I'll be providing a succinct 4-point response to this complaint that outlines HSH's actions, compliance, and recommendations for dismissal in under 3 minutes. Overview of the allegations. Mr. Aaron Wilson alleges that HSH violated Section 6721 of the Sunshine Ordinance by failing to respond timely or completely to his public records request. He further claims HSH improperly diverted his request to another department. 2. Key facts and legal compliance. HSH received Mr. Wilson's request on December 31st and logged it into Next Request on the same day. January 1st was New Year's holiday, so HSH was closed. On January 2nd, I consulted HSH's privacy officer to ensure that the request was properly determined, i.e. Sunshine or a client record. It was determined that since the requester alleged himself to be a client who sought both direct quotes from his request, emails primarily, but mediums of data, other should be included, about themselves as a client in our system, Mr. Wilson would need to verify his identity as a client. Within 2 hours of consulting HSH's privacy officer.
Just a moment. We're losing you, please.
Can you hear me clearly?
You went off mic for a minute there.
Oh, I'll just continue. So it was basically determined that he would need to verify his identity as a client since he alleged to be a client, and the records would be referencing client data. Within 2 hours of consulting HSH's privacy officer, I also placed a call out to staff to begin the search for responsive records with the January 8th deadline for production, just so that we could get these records to him should he produce the request form. On January 6th, HSH provided guidance on how to submit a client record request and release the necessary form to Mr. Wilson as a courtesy. On January 6th, the request was formally closed out of Next Request and effectively converted to a client record request. These are handled by the department's privacy officer, which is not another department as alleged by Mr. Wilson's complaint. HSH handled the request in accordance with Sunshine timelines, responding within 10 days. It's important to note that the complaint was also submitted before the 10-day response deadline, and federal privacy regulations governing client data, such as HMIS data standards, supersede local Sunshine Ordinance provisions. As far as our efforts, we proactively collected responsive records and informed Mr. Wilson of the proper process for assessing that information. It's important to note that there are 2 Aaron Wilsons in our system with different social security numbers and date of births, none of which utilize the personal email that initiated this Sunshine request. A substantive follow-up clarifying both the distinctions between the 2 request types was submitted as a courtesy, as the laws that would be violated if HSH released records that identified the name of a recipient of public social services funded by state or federal grants without proper authorizations, as outlined by California Welfare Institution Code 10850, which was also provided on January 10th, which was the standard response deadline timeframe.
Thank you.
Despite guidance,
Thank you. That concludes your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, at this point, we may have some questions for the parties. Member Stein.
I actually want to defer to you first.
Okay. Uh, okay, I'm going to ask of first the petitioner. When you, I just want to confirm, when you hear back from this department and they tell you to submit a request for your own information, client request, is that something that you've actually ever done? And I'm not trying to tell you to do it. I'm just wondering if you've ever done that with this agency.
Never.
Okay. Do you, in your understanding of what that might, what that may result in, if you made such a request, do you believe that they would have some kind of, I'll call it a file, some kind of database, some kind of file that would include responsive documents that apply to you?
You think that? Because if someone just mentions you, they may not put that in your file that you just mentioned.
Yes, I understand that.
Okay, I'm glad you get that.
Let me say that I think you've made it very clear for us that your request, it's not limited to the kind of information that would be confidential under various levels of law, because it has to do with the treatment of you as a client, as they're calling it. I understand that. I guess first, would you consider yourself to be a client of this agency?
Yeah, I never
Okay.
said that I was. So he's just making that up. The closest thing I've said to that was, and I quote, I am the only Aaron at the Bayview VTC. So he's taking
Okay.
that and running with it.
What do you mean when you say at the Bayview ATC? What does that mean?
That means that I will not be confused with another Aaron. That's what the point of making that statement was. So there's not another Aaron at the VTC, at the Vehicle Triage Center. There's not a
Okay.
client here. There's not a staff member here named Aaron. So it's very a narrow type of request. And I'm trying to be helpful here. Turns out that didn't work. But yeah.
I guess there's just a word that I'm focusing on here. When you say at the Bayview VTC, what does that exactly mean? You're receiving services. You are located there physically. What do you mean by at?
Yeah. Just call us the served population. So, client in this context would refer to someone receiving sort of like caseworker services. And then once we go with client, and I didn't never said client, then we're down to casework notes or casework file entries. And we're not where I want to be at all. And that's the deception allegation I'm making.
Okay.
Just keep asking me questions. I'm going to be as clear as possible.
You think there may be some of those case notes that would possibly refer to you? I know that you're also seeking emails, but I'm just asking about what you just said about case notes. Would you have been involved at Bayview to some extent where they may have developed case notes that would have mentioned you?
Absolutely. I know it's there. I'm searching for something I know, or I would say most probably should be there. I mean, there should be these interactions that are both in my case file, my records or your records, as the thing says, and also separate from those where they're talking about, oh, Aaron did that. Well, if I tell Aaron did that to somebody else, that's not going to go into my file, probably. I don't think so. And if it is, then say that. Everything with Aaron is put into one file. And then I said, okay, if that's what it is, then I'll give you my social security number and my date of birth, and so be it. It seems a little bit too much, but okay, I'll play ball with you.
I'm going to, thank you. Thank you. I'm going to switch to the respondent. You said that there was a determination made that even though this was described as a public records request, that it was going to be treated as a client record request. And I want to, it seems like to me it's both. And I'm wondering if that was considered a possibility, is to treat it as both what the client could receive as a client request, and in addition, what documents could be public records outside of what the client request was for.
Correct. We did take that into consideration. I just want to add that we also err on the side of caution when it comes to client-related information, records, etc. When it comes to the complainant stating that they were a client in our system, we figured it would be far more simple to have them fill out the client record request form to verify that information so that we could remain in compliance with the law and get that information to him as quickly as humanly possible.
Did anyone search for the emails that Mr. Wilson requested that would not be contained in his client file?
Yes, sir. That information was immediately searched for when the request was made. We just wanted to make sure the appropriate channel was gone through prior to release. We do have all of those records. We just believe he has to submit the form verifying his identity in order to release them to him.
Okay, so this includes emails, any emails that would mention Mr. Wilson's name. There was a search done for those?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
2nd of January. You're holding in some way the documents responsive to that search, correct? Correct.
Okay. How many emails does that include?
I don't have that information completely offhand, but I can get that to you as soon as possible.
Can you give me an estimate of how big of a batch that would be?
Yeah, give me 1 second.
Okay.
Say something while he's searching for that?
No. Hold on.
About 164 files.
Okay. And none of them have been produced because you want to get a client request?
Correct.
Okay. If you got the client request form, would you produce those 164 to Mr. Wilson?
Oh, absolutely. We thought that was
Okay.
clear in terms of my communication and also the privacy officer's communication.
Okay. If Mr. Wilson were to only submit a public records request, do you think there's some reason why you're entitled to not produce those emails to Mr. Wilson?
We believe it hinges on the HMIS technical data standards, usurp and local sunshine ordinance, because it references a client. I think you could think of this from the scope as if anybody else in the public were to make a record request for emails referencing a client at any point in time, which would also include potential personal identifying information outside of just the client's name, as well as personal health information. We would be within the legal balance of being able to withhold that without the client's consent, which would also be afforded through a submission of the client record request form.
Could you produce those in a redacted form to comply with the Sunshine Ordinance and state law?
We could. I think that's where it gets a little bit sticky because in this case, this is where, again, if this were somebody else, a general member of the public making this request, they've already identified the client's records that they're seeking. So it's directly about accessing client data at that point.
Got it. Okay. I have no further questions at this time. Member Stein?
I have a question for the respondent, which is how was the email searched?
I can follow back up with our staff, but I mean, I just also note I'm not only relatively new to the department, but when I make these call out for records from our staff, I'm not clear on what we'll receive. I'm not in these conversations. I'm not on other teams outside of our communication space. So I just make the call out to identified staff based on conversations we have on the back end on who would have potentially responsive records. And I just review what we receive by the deadline that I set for them to submit the records. I will say though, with this case, I asked them to search for emails that would reference the complainant in them.
And when you say there's about 164 records, you're talking just about emails?
Correct.
Okay, those are my only questions.
Okay. No more questions. Let's, we're going to deliberate now because we don't make any decisions, but we are considering whether to move this forward to the task force. And if we do, in what form or fashion we do. Any ideas?
Something?
No, thank you. I think we understand what we need to do here.
I'll be seeing you again on the second request that he hasn't fulfilled at all in the 10 days. So I just make a new complaint for that?
It would be a separate request. So I believe that the guidelines would say, submit another request. Another complaint, please.
You guys are fair. Thank you for hearing me. All right.
So I'm just looking at the California Welfare and INST, I don't know what it stands for, code section 10850. And in part A, it's written pretty broadly that all applications and records concerning any individual made or kept by any public officer or agency in connection with the administration of any provision of this code relating to any form of public social service which grants and aid are received by this state from the U.S. government shall be confidential and shall not be open to examinations. It's not working. For any purpose not directly connected with the administration of that program. So it sounds like it's very broadly written that there's sort of confidentiality of these records, which could include email records. But it does seem like, and I understand the petitioner does not, is not too amenable to the idea, but it does seem that if the proper form is filled out, they can get those records. So that would be my recommendation, but as the best way forward to actually get the petitioner the records they wanted. And I'm not sure beyond that kind of what to do with this case.
Yes, I think that there are definitely quite a few records that are going to be involved here that would be covered by that privilege, immunity, exemption, etc. And I would, just as a practical matter, I would say that the best way, and it's not an illegitimate way, but the best way to get a lot of records here for petitioner would be to go through signing or executing that client request form. But that's petitioner's choice whether to do that. The problem here is for him is that a lot of the documentation is not going to be public records. It's simply not going to be public records, anything that's in his file. Whether the emails, the 164 emails are quote public records. I'm not sure. But there are certain types of public records, and I'll just, this is not something new, that where they would be subject to production, and we do see these situations where a lot of the record is blacked out because it's redacted for various reasons like privacy. That may be what we would expect in this case. But I think that there needed to be at least a response that, yes, we do have emails. We have 164, whatever, but there was no such response on the emails. There was nothing. He was just shoved into this other channel. And I think that's the problem here. And so I don't know if I can make any recommendation on this, but I believe we do have jurisdiction. This involves public documents. I think that I would move it to the task force without recommendation to consider whether there are one or more violations in this case.
Are you making a motion?
Motion, yeah.
I would second that motion.
Okay.
Just a moment, please. Moved by Chair Schmidt, seconded by Member Stein, to find that the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force has jurisdiction over the matter, that the requested records are public, and refer the matter to the full task force for consideration of other violations.
Any public comment?
If anyone wishes to make public comment on Complaint Committee item number 7, please approach the podium at this time. Members of the online community, raise your hand in the app or press *3. I'll give you a moment. We have no one approaching the podium, no callers in the queue.
Okay, let's vote.
Taking the vote. Chair Schmidt.
Aye.
Chair Schmidt, aye. Member Stein.
Aye.
Member Stein, aye. Member Sugarman, absent. 2 ayes, motion passes.
Thank you to the parties. Let's see if we can find Mr. Barker.
We have Mr. Barker. One moment, please. Mr. Barker, moving you to panelist. One moment, please, while I check the status from the zoo.
Oh,
Hello, Mr. Barker. One moment, please. There has been no response from the zoo.
All right, so we may just be hearing from Mr. Barker. We had maybe a technical difficulty, so we went ahead and heard a different case. But we were at the point where in Barker versus the Joint Zoo Committee, we were going to hear from the party. So, Mr. Barker, it is time for your up to 3 minutes when the timer's ready.
This is regarding item number 6, file 24066. Mr. Barker, are you ready?
I am.
Your 3 minutes begins now.
Hello, I manage a watchdog site called San Francisco Zoo Watch, which is sanfranciscozoo.watch, and I focus on covering critical issues at the San Francisco Zoo. Tonight, I am here to formally lodge a complaint against the San Francisco Joint Zoo Committee for violations of the Sunshine Ordinance, and specifically sections 67.15 and 67.16. Before discussing the specifics, I just kind of want to set the scene. The Joint Zoo Committee is a group comprising of members of the Zoological Society and Rec and Park, and it's co-chaired by Larry Mazzola and Kat Anderson. Their leadership has unfortunately shown bias towards the interest of the Zoological Society, and this bias manifests in several ways. There's some examples. Kat Anderson has misused public comment time during agenda items that aren't listed, offering praise to the zoo instead of addressing urgent need concerns. The committee's response to criticism is pretty inconsistent. They respond in detail concerning criticism when it suits them, but then is silent when kind of important questions are asked. I'd like to kind of talk about two outright violations of the Sunshine Ordinance. One was on November 21st when Larry Mazzola ordered ABC7 News to cease filming during a public meeting. And on December 19th, Kat Anderson instructed a public attendee to stop recording and even threatening to eject them if they didn't comply. The bias also really extends to meeting minutes, which are compiled by the zoo's director's administrative assistant and is very problematic and skewed. Despite, there's been some improvements, but the minutes don't really aren't accurate. Our comments as the public are often oversimplified, stripped of their nuance, and are sometimes just entirely omitted. There was also, a specific example of this was in the November 21st meeting, where, legitimate animal welfare advocates were labeled as anti-zoo activists. And the terminology just wasn't accurate, and it really was just framing concerned citizens as adversaries rather than stakeholders, really trying to create change at the zoo.
30 seconds.
One of the other issues is just accessibility of information. The records of the proceedings are really difficult to access. It's really hard to know when a meeting is being held, and oftentimes these records of meetings are buried within folders and folders and folders and folders. And I'm really urgent. It's urgent that the Ordinance Task Force really investigate these violations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Do we have anyone here on behalf of the respondent, which is the San Francisco Joint Zoo Committee?
If there's anyone in the online community for this item, please raise your hand in the app or press *3. We have no one in the room approaching the podium.
Okay, so I think we have confirmed that there is no appearance on behalf of the Zoo Committee. So we can move on to questions for Mr. Barker. And I don't know if I have any questions for Mr. Barker myself.
I don't have any questions, but I have a couple comments about what I think would be useful. Should this package or should this case be sent to a full task force hearing, which I think it very well may be. So I'll just say, Mr. Barker, I understand all of your complaints about this committee, although in this particular packet, some are more documented than others. So I know you say there are skewed or biased minutes. We basically get one example in the packet, but it's generally not our purview to micromanage how the minutes, how things are described, even though I might agree with you that there is some bias in the description. But I think there are three claims you make in this packet that seem very, some are somewhat substantiated, but could maybe be better substantiated if this goes forward. One is the idea that public commenters were given different amounts of time to comment. But you don't actually cite references, so we don't have the evidence of that. So I would suggest that you provide quotes or references to audio materials and locations in those audio materials where we can see that there was a change in the amount of time that public commenters were given. And then you talk about the, not allowing video recordings. And I think, again, if you can provide evidence through any audio recordings that you might have of the meeting about where news people were told that they could not video these meetings, that would be extremely helpful just to have more substantiation of this claim. And then you note on page 21 that members of the committee make comments that go beyond what's appropriate in public discussion of meetings, according to the Good Government Guide. And this does seem to be the case with reference to the October 24th meeting minutes. But it would be good to have a copy of these minutes. I believe that only the November minutes were included in the package. So if you could include those October minutes that you referenced, that would also be very useful. So I'm inclined that on those 3 points to send it forward to the full task force, but I think it would really help your case to have more substantiation for those points when it goes forward.
Thank you, Member Stein. I'm with you on that. I think that we will be moving this forward. I don't know if there's really too much question about it. I think that 67.15 claim may be the stronger one. I'm not sure how much we can really get into the content of notes. I think it may be obvious one way or another whether the zoo committee is something that is in the jurisdiction of the task force. I don't know if we really have the ability at this point to make that determination. We may have more of an ability when the full task force hears this. So I think this is going to be a case where we pose that as a question. We can't decide jurisdiction here. And it would be helpful if we had someone from or on behalf of the zoo committee here. We do not. But that may be because they validly are not under our jurisdiction. So I don't know the answer to that. So Member Stein, if you want to make a motion on this.
Okay. I'll make a motion that these are public records that we think we may have jurisdiction, but that we need to further determine that at the full task force level, and to recommend to the full task force, presuming that we have jurisdiction, to consider a violation of section 67.7D. 67.7D, requiring that members of city bodies during a public meeting make only minimal clarification or question comments during the public comment periods. Is that right? Make only minimal clarification or questions. Say that, questions during the public comment period. 67.14A, regarding the right of persons attending open or public meetings to take video and audio recordings of the proceedings.
6721A as an apple.
67.14A.
67.14A as an apple.
The right of persons attending open and public meetings to take video or audio recordings of the proceedings. And section 67.15C, applying time limits uniformly to members of the public during public comment periods. And I also just want to reiterate the request, this isn't part of it, but to the petitioner to supply additional information that substantiates these claims.
Excellent motion. I second.
Moved by Member Stein, seconded by Chair Schmidt, to find that the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force may have jurisdiction in the matter and that the requested records are public, and refer the matter to the full task force for hearing to consider Section 67.21, D as in dog, regarding comments made during public meetings. Section 67.14, A as in apple. The language will be added here. Regarding attendance at open meetings, and 67.15 sub C as in cat, regarding time limits during public comment, the public comment period.
Okay, can I just clarify? The first one is 67.7D.
Not 21,
Yeah, not 21.
7D.
First
67.
violation, 67.7 sub D as in dog.
Yes. Which requires members of city bodies during public meetings to make only minimal clarifications or questions during public comment period.
All right. Public comment? Individuals wishing to make public comment on item 6, please approach the podium if you're in the room. If you are in the online community, please raise your hand in the app or press *3. I'll give you a moment. We have no one approaching the podium, no one in the online community with their hand raised.
All right, let's vote.
Taking the vote, Member Stein.
Aye.
Member Stein, aye. Chair Schmidt.
Aye.
Chair Schmidt, aye. Member Sugarman, absent. 2 ayes, motion passes.
Okay. And we have one more Barker case. That is our last case for the day.
Item number 8, are we going to return to item 4?
Well, we'll just return to it, but we'll go. I'm just saying we have one more case and then we go back and finish up the hearing.
Calling item 8, file number 25003. Complaint filed by Justin Barker against San Francisco Zoo for allegedly violating Administrative Code Sunshine Ordinance, Section 67.21, by failing to respond to a public records request in a timely and/or complete manner.
Okay, let's, now this one is against the zoo as opposed to the Joint Zoo Committee. Do we have anyone here on behalf of the zoo? It sounds like we may not.
Checking. 1 moment, please. We have no response from the zoo.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, not fine, but now we've confirmed that. Let's hear from Mr. Barker first, up to 3 minutes.
Mr. Barker, are you ready?
I am.
Your 3 minutes begins now.
Hello, I'm here to file another complaint and to also highlight some troubling patterns at the San Francisco Zoological Society and with its executive director and CEO, Tanya Peterson. These patterns really severely undermine transparency, public trust, and accountability. On July 31st, 2024, I submitted a detailed records request to Peterson for critical documents concerning zoo operations and animal welfare. And this included the 2022 American Zoological Accreditation Report. After an extended delay, the response was shockingly inadequate. It's actually the first time after years of trying to get records that they sent something through. What she sent was a single page from the report that is typically like 35 to 55 pages long. And that page she sent to me was her glowing review. And it's the only page I guess she felt the public deserved to see. This lack of transparency is not just inconvenient, it's a clear evasion of accountability. In 2019, this task force unanimously ruled in file 19048 that the zoo had violated the Sunshine Ordinance and also state law. And despite that, the zoo's vice president of welfare, Jason Waters, informed the task force the zoo intended to continue to flout the law. This institution is funded by public money and it really owes the public transparency, yet secrecy really persists and it's stronger than ever. Zoo insiders that I've spoke with have confirmed that not only has she not released these kind of records to the public, she also keeps it from her staff and denied access to the full AZA report. And really, this report could shed light on the problems that are happening at the zoo. And one thing that I really want to kind of highlight is there's really a broader issue here. The zoo is attempting to get pandas from China. And the New York Times has recently revealed that the contracts with zoos require restricting information and disclosure about animals' health and welfare. And really, there's just this culture of secrecy at the San Francisco Zoo, and your body has found that indeed the zoo has flouted these laws, and I really hope that you can move this forward so these issues can be addressed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We have no one on behalf of the zoo here. And so this is a time for any questions to Mr. Barker. And let me just start with, you made a request in July. What have you received actually? It could be 1 page, 2 pages.
I received a single page from that 55 report, from the AZA report, basically just with information about how great Tanya Peterson is.
Okay, thank you. Do you have an understanding of who Tanya Peterson's employer is?
So Tanya Peterson is the CEO of the zoo, and essentially the city of San Francisco owns the land and all of the animals at the zoo, and then they have a joint public-private partnership with the Zoological Society. So in '93, there was and this is why your initial, why it's been voted. Yeah, I'm on a call right now. Okay, I'll be right with you. Okay. The initial findings was that not only were they in violation of the law, but there is the agreement with the city that basically the language highlights that the zoo is required to follow through on transparency laws. So that's kind of like what the issue is. There has been questions previously that, hey, is the zoo under this jurisdiction of the Sunshine Ordinance? And the contract with the Zoological Society and the city make it pretty clear that they are.
Got it.
So
okay,
that's
thank you.
My extended answer. That's your question.
No, that's a great answer. A lot of good information. Thank you. No more questions.
Just one quick question from me. Do you happen to have a copy of the 1993 Public-Private Lease Partnership Agreement?
I do. Have that.
Because I think that would be very useful to add to the packet should it go to the full task force.
Okay, great.
Okay.
I'm happy to share that.
Okay. If there are no more questions, it seems like the only decision here for me is whether we send it as a consent matter or as a recommendation matter. I wish that, I don't know if jurisdiction is going to be contested in this case. It's the zoo as opposed to the zoo committee, but we have another one of these interesting public-private situations. Member Stein, any thoughts?
Yeah. I'll make a motion to forward this to the full task force for consideration of a 67.21 violation and additional consideration of whether we have jurisdiction.
Is there a second?
Yes, second.
Moved by Member Stein, seconded by Chair Schmidt, to find that the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force
To forward.
just a moment. To forward the matter to the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force for consideration of a 67.21 violation and additional consideration of whether the task force has jurisdiction.
Okay, public comment on that.
Taking public comment on item number 8. If you are in the room and wish to make public comment, please approach the podium. Members of the online community, please raise your hand in the app or press *3. I'll give you a moment. We have one individual wishing to make public comment.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is,
One moment,
I
please.
apologize.
Yeah, 3 minutes.
You have 3 minutes. Are you
Yeah,
ready?
I'll be less than that, but thank you. Hi, good evening. My name is Michelangelo Torres, and I serve as the chairperson for the San Francisco Animal Commission. And I did want to point out one thing concerning Mr. Barker's presentation that wasn't mentioned is that the zoo also receives $4 million in funding from the city. So I wanted that to also be part of the record or part of your knowledge too. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, any other public commenters?
We have no one else approaching the podium. No hands raised.
Okay, let's vote.
Taking the vote. Member Stein.
Aye.
Member Stein, aye. Chair Schmidt.
Aye.
Chair Schmidt, aye. Member Sugarman, absent. 2 ayes. Motion passes.
All right. So the next thing we'll go ahead and read number 4, although I'm going to hold off on any substance on that.
Returning to item 4, hearing on complaint committee administration. Discuss the role in advancing expansion of the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force role per the Administrative Code Sunshine Ordinance Section 67.30 authorizations.
Okay. I think it would be my preference that we do keep this on our calendar, but we have another hearing that's going on right now, and we only have 2 out of 3, and we've generally been doing this with 3 out of 3. Our discussion on this. So let's conclude on number 4, and we'll move it to the next hearing. And let's go ahead and read number 9 next.
Item 9, announcements, comments, questions, and future agenda items by members of the complaint committee.
Nothing from me. Member Stein, anything? Okay. Next item.
Item number 10, adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
The complaint committee is adjourned at 5:45 p.m.
Okay. Thank you.
Recording is off.
Done to you too.